We just spent 8 hours on a live stream talking about these games, and I'm still not sure I know what happened today. Gold medal, let's go! Back on the fly, this here recapping, predicting the World Junior Championship, U18 Women's World, the Men's World Championship, Women's World Championship, U18 Men's World Championship. What is happening? It is by far one of the dumbest things I have ever seen. Prepare to die. Figured it was better safe than sorry. Scores! Nathan McKinnon! Scores for Canada. Your home for international hockey. This is On the Fly. Hello everyone, welcome back to On the Fly. Today we're recapping quarterfinal and relegation action for the men's under-18 World Championships happening in Bratislava and Trenčín, Slovakia. So we'll hop into today starting with the scores from today's game, starting with a 4-3 win for Norway over Germany. Now, in this game, it was a really impressive performance by the Norwegian squad and a comeback one at that. Where we look at this game for Germany as well, they start relatively cold for the Germans. Norway jumps out to the early 2-0 lead. Germany ends up finding themselves kind of clawing back. They end up going up 3-2 going into the final 2 minutes. Two relatively poor penalties led to the Norwegians ending up scoring on one of the power plays. We also saw the Norwegians end up scoring as well shortly thereafter in that what we like to call the dangerous minute, where players aren't necessarily changed out. So Norway ends up scoring 2 goals in the last 2 minutes of the game to put themselves up. And from there, unfortunately, Germany just couldn't really come back in this one as they end up losing this game 4-3. But you look at this game for the Germans coming in, you knew that really this was a do or die game, right? Where if you win, you stay up at the top division. You lose, you get sent down to the Division 1A level to be replaced by Switzerland. And so for this German team, an unfortunate end to this tournament for them. After what has been a bit of a roller coaster of emotions, they lose their game that matters early on in the tournament. They lose to Denmark. They then get put into this relegation game. They lose, obviously, in the end, but they also, on the path of doing that, they beat the Czechs. They give themselves an opportunity to go out and beat the U.S. Unfortunately for them, couldn't quite get the job done there, and that brought them on to today, and a game that they held the lead for most of it. 2 relatively poor penalties late in the game, in the second one even worse. Good old-fashioned hand on the puck off the face-off draw. That is the kind of mistakes that frankly get punished, especially come playoff time, or in this case relegation time, because the games are so magnified. Every mistake becomes amplified. That is the difference in these types of games. And unfortunately for Germany, they did learn the hard way, losing to a Norwegian team who, once again, as soon as games start to matter and it's the relegation game, we see a different version of this team, and one that looked desperate towards the end, yes, but they also came out flying. The opening parts of this game jumps out to an early 2-0 lead. That's the kind of results you're looking for a team like Norway, who frankly should be competing with a team like Germany, not necessarily supposed to be beating them, but definitely being close with them. And so that, for me, that was one of the better results and definitely better performances than what we saw from Norway earlier on in the tournament, where they really didn't look all that great in all 4 of their games that they played. This was their big game, and it was a huge win for them, a 4-3 one at that. They will avoid the relegation spot, staying up at this tournament for at least 1 more year. Then we will shift down to the second game of the day between the Czechs and the Finns. We did see Czechia take home a big 2-1 win in the first quarterfinal of the day. As far as this game went, it was relatively slow as well, where, as we talked about coming in, the Finns, who were notoriously slow starters in these so far at this tournament, it continued into today. The Czechs, notorious on the other side, notorious fast starters, and kind of trailed off towards the end. And so this game played very similarly to what we ended up predicting, where the Czechs jump out to that early lead, right? And they get up 1-0. The Finns end up tying the game. That's that pushback that we were waiting for. And then the Czechs get the 2-1 goal late into that second period. And from there, we saw the Finns completely take over the game towards the end. Unfortunately for them, just couldn't quite get it past a hot goaltender in net for the Czech squad. And that was the difference maker today for the Finnish team, is just a few lucky bounces that didn't necessarily go their way. An unfortunate end to this tournament for the Finns, as they will be shut down as of the quarterfinals. The team coming in kind of ranked inside that top 5, as well the Slovaks, who we now have to include in that top 6. they were kind of competitive throughout this tournament. Unfortunately for the Finns, losing a key game to Canada and really getting blown out by Canada and bleeding a point against the Slovaks was one of the biggest reasons why they ended up where they did in the end. But you look at it for this Finnish team, still a tournament to be proud of. They had quite a few good results outside of really that last game against Canada. Today's game, very similarly, another really good result, another really good performance rather. The result, not necessarily what they were hoping for, but they still put together an impressive performance and showed well at this tournament overall. And unfortunately for them, their path will end here at the quarterfinal round. As for the Czechs, a lot of momentum, I think, was generated from this game. Obviously, going into a game where you're not necessarily expected to be a favorite. We've seen what the Czechs can do so far, being that quote-unquote favorite team, whether it be against the Swedes, the U.S., they've shown that when you go up against a favorite, the Czechs are a team to keep an eye on because upset watch is always sneaking around. And today was no different for this Czech squad. They looked really good in what they were doing and continuously found new ways to kind of find gaps and find seams that weren't there. They got quite a few good chances, bailed out by their goaltending, sure. Solovets for the Czechs was huge today for them. But at the same time, you tend to start to expect that. And that was a key difference maker in today's games. The Czechs do end up taking it over Finland 2-1 your final. A big win as they will now advance to the semifinal round where they'll play the winner of our next game as we switch on to Sweden and Canada, where we'll see a 4-2 win for the Swedes over Canada. And yeah, not a great end of the tournament for the Canadians. This game, I mean, a slow start for Canada early on. Quarterfinal game against the Swedes wasn't enough to wake up for. We saw the Swedes really dominate early on. They get out to an early 2-0 lead. Second period rolls around. Canada, a completely different team. The far better team in that period too, I may add. They end up getting the tying goal as of 0-0 basically on the clock. It was about a half second remaining. And then from there, just kind of let the game go again. It was a back and forth third period. And unfortunately, one goal ended up being one bad power play or one bad penalty led to a pretty poor gap in coverage that led to that third goal of the game. Was the difference maker there. The Swedes end up potting the empty net. The final score of the game is 4-2 for the Swedes. And for Canada, another kind of disappointing performance from them. We'll talk a little bit about it later on, about kind of our general thoughts and opinions. We spent quite a bit of time on our live stream today, our 8 hours and 20-minute live stream. If you have not already, be sure to go check out our reaction to that. All the game timestamps are in there on the graphic, so you can kind of navigate that fairly easily. But for Canada today, a very disappointing loss there. For the Swedes, though, a huge win after a bit of a disappointing start to this tournament, getting blown out by the American team, or on them in a bit, as well as the Czech team, and losing to the Czech team. They had a really good bounce back game today. They're looking now to try and take home gold. They are, I'd say, currently the favorites as far as the gold medal race will go. It's really is theirs to lose. And so we'll see whether or not they are going to be able to continue to pull through at this tournament. Definitely a team to watch there. Then we go to the fourth game of the day between Latvia and the USA, and one of my favorite games of the day, one of the biggest upsets of the day, and one of the biggest miracles of the day, where we saw Latvia knock off the US by a score of 5-2. This game was one of those, I don't want to call it a masterclass because we use that word fairly light here on this channel, but that game was a masterclass by this Latvian squad, and one that you think about what they needed to do coming into this game. It was a lot of good goaltending. It was a lot of kind of every opportunity they had, they needed to take care of it and score on. And credit to the Latvian squad today. They did exactly that, and they earned one of the most impressive victories in recent histories, especially at this tournament for the Latvians, one that I'm sure will go down in the history books. They now have a very interesting opportunity, which we'll talk about later as well, but they have the chance now to go and play, a guaranteed chance for a medal going up against the Slovak team that, frankly, the Latvians, I still believe, can beat. That is going to be probably one of the best games we'll see as far as the semifinals goes as well. I mean, the Czechs and the Swedes are always a good one as well. But I'm excited to see what Latvia can do. A really impressive performance from them today. They had good goaltending. They had really everything was working for them, for this team. And so we'll see whether or not they can continue their success. For the U.S., this game was just disappointing, and there's no real way around that for the U.S. team. They didn't play well. They had chances. They didn't play well. They couldn't really get to the middle of the ice. Every mistake they made ended in the back of their net, a true Latvian style of game. And that was the difference in today's game, is that the Latvians played kind of that team structure. They played well, and once again, it's another game that Latvia has shown themselves well at a tournament, especially with this age group, where now we're going to see if they can continue that going into the future. Definitely a team to watch there. But for the Latvians, once again, a huge win for them. They will advance to the semifinals at this year's tournament, guarantee themselves for a chance at a medal. On Friday, they will look to see if they can guarantee themselves a medal at this tournament. Then to our last game of the day between Slovakia and Denmark, a 7-1 final in this one. Not really a pretty one as far as this game went, but still a game nonetheless for the Slovaks. Completely dominant in this one. No real chance for the Danes. The Slovaks did a perfect job. They took out Denmark early. Didn't really allow them a chance to get back into it. But in the end, we see the Slovaks end up taking this game by a score of 7-1. Then we shift over to our news section of the day. We'll start here with Germany. They are relegated. They will be sent down to the Division 1A level for next year, where they will try and earn promotion back up to the top group. Switzerland will be the team who will replace them at the end of this year's tournament. Then to Norway with an arm or a leg. Nicholas Arum Olsen, that's the joke, as he had a hat trick today, and a huge part to why this Norwegian team did as well as they did. A key contributor, he scored both goals late into that game, completing the hat trick. A huge game from him is obviously for Norway. We talked pretty extensively about him being quiet so far at this tournament, with only a goal coming into today. He then puts 3 more in the back of the net. A huge game for him, and one of the main reasons why this game ended in a Norway win. A huge game from Arum Olsen, and we'll see kind of what the future holds for him, especially as now we kind of shift focus onto the World Juniors. We'll see Norway next year, as well as potentially down the line in the Men's World Championship. Should be definitely someone to keep an eye on as he continues to grow his game and evolve into what's likely going to be a first-round pick on the NHL draft side. Looking forward to seeing what he can bring at the next level for the international competitions. Then to Finland with patterns, and it's that slow start we talked about. That really, for me, was the difference maker in this game. You can't allow teams like the Czechs to generate a lot of momentum. And yes, the Finns ended up doing a pretty good job at bouncing back come the second period time. But the important part is that you have to start these games quick. And if you can't, then all of a sudden you allow teams like the Czechs to continue to build confidence. And unfortunately for the Finns today, that was kind of the Achilles heel for them. Tough loss for sure for this Finnish squad, as they will end their bid for a medal at this year's tournament in the quarterfinals. Then onto the Czechs, with the opportunities existing very much now. And you look at what the Czechs have to do to get to the gold medal round. They have to go through a team they've already beat. It's always tough to win the second one, but at the same time, they've shown that they can compete with the best teams at this tournament. We'll see whether or not they are going to be able to pull off one last big upset at this tournament and find themselves to be able to play for a medal here. Should definitely be a game to watch there. Then to Canada with good grief, and another tournament, right, where Canada's a loser. And it's annoying because for me, and we spent a lot of time on this on the stream, so I won't go too far into it today on this recap video. But my biggest issue, and I said it on the stream, I'll say it here, was not the fact that they lost to the Swedes today, because frankly, that game's a toss-up. My biggest issue comes from the fact that they are playing the Swedes in the first place. This Canadian team had this individualist identity off the start of this tournament. And it's not new. I'm not going to pretend that it's a new thing, it's a new development, that all of a sudden Canada's playing selfishly. This has been an issue since the very start of this tournament. It's been an issue since the very start of this year across every other IIHF event, whether it be the World Juniors, the women's U18s a little bit less. They just got beat by a better U.S. team. The men's and the women's Olympics has been more or less an atrocity. They've been terrible with respect to that. And that's, for me, is one of the biggest issues I'm seeing right now, is the fact that Canada doesn't really care about the wins anymore. And now it's about individual stat padding. Now it's about trying to raise your draft stock. This has been an issue for a while. And frankly, it's getting to that point now where something needs to change. I don't know whether it's a tactic level shift, because right now their tactics are getting blown up by these European teams, because frankly, European teams have far superior tactics to what Canada has, and the US as well. The only difference is that the skill level has never really been the same. And so teams like Canada and the US have always been able to kind of dominate that way. But as the skill level is caught up, we're starting to see that tactic shift, and that the ability for these teams to play defense turns out to be huge. And once again, it's not the fact that they lost to the Swedes today that bothers me. Because frankly, the Swedes are a really good team. We had them going to the gold medal game. Even that game was a toss-up since the start. That game doesn't bother me. It's the fact that they're there in the first place, because of the fact that they played terribly, because they were too selfish with the puck, because they were awful in their own end, and the fact that when you get the opportunities, you're missing the net, trying to go top corner, trying to make the extra pass, trying to be making your highlight reel for when you get drafted. That is my issue. I have no issue with losing to the Swedes today, because frankly, the Swedes are a good team and they should be considered favorites to go all the way at this tournament. My issue arises from the fact that they are there in the first place, because that alone is a fireable offense. The fact you lose to the Slovaks for the first time in program history at the U18 tournament, that is a fireable offense. You need to be able to get your players in line. Once again, I'm not going to say it's one thing. I'm not going to say it's just the coaching, because it's a team-wide thing. It's an organization-wide thing. It's a country-wide thing. And we've seen it at every level so far at the IIHF. There's an issue with Hockey Canada. We made it a podcast topic a few weeks back. They need to figure it out. Because they do. Because right now, it's not good enough. They're about to embark on probably one of the longest stretches without a gold medal at a IIHF event in quite a while. The pressure was on this team, the defending back-to-back gold medalists looking for the three-peat at this tournament. This was Canada's chance to go out and win gold. They blew it. Frankly, they did. But at the same time, they lose to a better team in the Swedes today. Okay, I can live with that. On to Sweden with momentum. For the Swedes, a lot of momentum generated from this game. We'll see if they can continue that into the semifinal round. Big opportunity for them there. Obviously now it's a bit more of that difficult game against the Czechs. On the other side of the semifinals, you're looking at at Latvia and Slovakia, which are two teams I would assume that the Swedes can beat. Who knows, though, as the Swedes have struggled a little bit at this tournament so far, which then brings us on to the U.S. with they blew it. And outside of the Canada game against the Slovaks, I would say this game was probably the biggest upset of the entire tournament. And I'd say it is the biggest upset of the entire tournament. You look at the way these two teams match up. The Latvians, yes, we talked a little bit about it. They can stick to their structure, if they can play good defensive hockey, and most importantly, they can make the U.S. panic a little bit, which they did do a very good job at. They will be successful in this game, and they were, right? And they played the near perfect game. They earned their win every step of the way. And for Latvia, unfortunately, or for the U.S., unfortunately, just finds themselves in a bit of a tough situation where you go down early in that game. It's very difficult to claw your way back against a team like Latvia, who plays so strong defensively because of the way that they trap away the middle of the ice, because of the way that they make you make mistakes and then capitalize on those opportunities. That's the style of game that teams like Latvia need to play if they are going to pull off upsets against the best teams at this tournament. As we kind of switch it over to Latvia for the news with Carpe Diem, seize the moment, seize the day, seize the opportunity. For this Latvian team, they have a chance at this tournament to do what no other Latvian team has done. See if they can go out and win that gold medal for their country. I'm extremely excited to see if they can do it. I think that they have a decent chance against the Slovaks. If you look back to our original prediction video, we did have Latvia actually beating the Slovak team. Once again, do I think that's still going to happen? I don't know. I wouldn't necessarily say it's my perfect guess, but at the same time, there's a chance. And the Latvians would take a chance any day of the week, especially considering the fact that they just pulled off a win against a team that they shouldn't have had a chance against. And so for the Latvian team, carpe diem, seize the day, seize the opportunity. We will see whether or not they are going to be able to get the job done come Friday. Should definitely be an interesting game there. Then on to Denmark with expectations. A loss today for the Danes, not expected to go out and beat the Slovaks. They won their game that mattered. They stay up at the top division for at least one more year. A really impressive tournament ran by them. They had 2 games, I'd say, that were competitive, probably more competitive than what was originally anticipated. Of course, with the game where they beat Germany, and then as well their game against the U.S. where they held them to 2 goals, made that one a little bit of a sweat too. Luckily for the U.S., they end up pulling through in that game, unlike today's, but still a really impressive performance by the Danes at this tournament to kind of turn a couple heads as they now look ahead to see whether or not they are going to be able to continue their success at this tournament for next year. Definitely a team to keep your eyes on there. And then the Slovaks with the path, and the path is there for them. They're going to go through Latvia in the semis. They should be considered favorites against them. Yes, the Latvians can absolutely pull off an upset against the Slovak team, but the Slovaks should absolutely 100% be considered a favorite going into that game. We'll see whether or not they can get the job done. The path is very clear for this Slovak team. We'll see once again if they can get the job done. Should definitely be interesting as we do now switch over to our playoff picture. We'll see the Czechs and the Swedes in semifinal matchup number 1, as well as Latvia and Slovakia. As far as what to expect in this one, I would say in the first one between the Czechs and the Swedes, I would say to kind of expect a close game as well. There's one of 2 ways that this game will play out. A game that's very similar to what we saw between the Czechs and the Swedes in the preliminary round, where that game stayed extremely close. The other way, and I'd say that it is definitely a possibility, is the Swedes just run completely over the Czech team. It's going to come down to how well the Czechs can play defense, how good the goaltending can be behind them. If they're able to shut down the Swedish attack, this Czech team has a chance. If they can't, and it becomes a goal-scoring battle, the Czechs very unlikely to end up pulling through and a win in that one. Kind of what to expect as far as this game goes. Expect the Czechs and the Swedes to be a relatively more defensive approach. The Czechs will be very defensive-minded in this game. Don't get me wrong, they'll get their chances, they'll generate stuff off the rush. But if they can't lock down the Swedish team, they're going to get run over in this game. Czechs and the Swedes, your first semifinal matchup. As well, the other one where we'll see the Slovaks and Latvia. As far as what to expect in this game, I would say you're kind of looking for a bit of an interesting dynamic as well, where the closer this game gets, the more it's going to favor Latvia. The more this game spreads out, the more it's going to favor the Slovaks. If you're looking at individual talent, advantage goes to the Slovaks. If you're looking at overall systems and the way the teams commit, you're going to favor the Latvians. This tournament has shown us that underdogs can thrive at a highest level. These 2 teams are perfect examples of that, and the fact that they're playing each other and are guaranteed a chance to play for gold, one of them, I think is a perfect representation of what this tournament has been. You have a team in Slovakia on home ice, a very tough team as well, I will add, just on the home ice part, that the Latvians are a team who make home ice extremely difficult to play because you end up panicking. And especially when games get important, your fans start to panic, which then makes you panic as a player, which then makes your fans panic, and which then creates mistakes. And there, we see that underlying issue is the fact that that's why Latvia can be so successful, especially on kind of away ice. The fact that you can combat teams because of the way you play. You make games more interesting than they should be. You make people sweat more than they should. And that's one of the biggest differences in these games, is that for a team like Latvia, they know how to play in these types of games. And so we'll see whether they can do it. A big part is going to ultimately come down to how well they can shut down the Slovak offense. If Latvia can shut it down, they will be just fine in this game. If they can't, if they become undisciplined, as we saw in that preliminary round game, where of course the Slovaks scored 4 power play goals and an empty netter to put it on top, that is going to be an issue for this Latvian team, because frankly they were competitive 5-on-5, if not the better team 5-on-5. It was extremely tight, and I think they have the ability to continue that into this game. We'll see, of course, whether or not they can do it. Should be a really fascinating game to watch. Slovakia and Latvia, your other semifinals. We'll flip over to tomorrow, or the schedule for Friday, May the 1st. We'll have Slovakia taking on Latvia at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. That is 3 p.m. Central European Summer Time and 4 p.m. Eastern European Summer Time. We will be live on YouTube for this game, as well as the Sweden-Czech game later on in that day. So be sure to come back for our live commentary, live watch along. We'll be going live here on the channel, so please do hit the subscribe button if you're interested in joining us for that stream. We had a record turnout today. Had over 11,000 views on that live stream, and so we'd love to have you aboard as we look for both these teams to really chase history at this tournament. It's going to be a really exciting tournament to watch for both these teams, and we'll see if they're going to be able to get the job done. 9 a.m. Latvia and Slovakia, your other game between Sweden and the Czechs. Both of them are going to be my games of the days as far as, once again, didn't say the time. Sweden and the Czechs, 1 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central European Time, and then 8 p.m. Eastern European Time. Although that wouldn't really affect the Czechs or the Swedes. But you look at it for these teams, right? And as far as my final predictions go, I'm going to go with Slovakia by a very tight margin. I think this game is going to be really close. And I think just maybe in overtime, or maybe even just a 1-goal game, we'll see the Slovaks end up on top there. The other game between the Swedes and the Czechs, I think this game will be extremely tight as well. I am going to take the Swedes, though. I just think that realistically, this Swedish team is kind of sitting just waiting to pop out right now. They've been sitting in that corner for quite a while at this tournament. They've shown themselves to be able to really bring it when the time matters. We'll see whether or not they can do that against a good Czech team who's shown well against the better teams at this tournament. It will be a tough game for them to win, but I do expect the Swedes to end up pulling through. Once again, your games of the day on May the 1st is both of them, Slovakia and Latvia at 9 a.m. Eastern Time, Sweden and the Czechs at 1 o'clock p.m. But that'll do it today for our scheduled content. We will now move in to viewer questions. We do put out a poll on our Twitter, X, and YouTube page asking for your thoughts and opinions and questions on the day. We have 2 questions to get to today. We'll start with one from Lebrecki Fonda, who says, "We have seen Canada not perform as they wanted on quite a lot of tournaments over the past few years. Do you think they will someday change the coach once again, but also change the strategy with it? Like not giving away so many power plays and play like a team, not only for highlight goals, because these are the main things they do badly." And I don't know. I think it's a fair question, because frankly they do that. Highlight reel goals have been an issue since the start of these tournaments, because every time they're looking for something else. They have struggled mightily at these tournaments. This isn't necessarily something that's new, and as you mentioned, this is why they struggle. Is it a tactic shift that needs to change? Is it something else? And I don't know. And that's the issue. I'm just getting to this point now where every time I watch the same thing happen again and again, I feel like I'm going insane, because still to this point, nothing has changed. And will something change? Probably not. And that's going to be the issue, is how are you going to revolutionize a program that will not budge at all? It's not going to be new talent, because new talent is going to eventually get dissipated by the other countries, because the other countries are catching up. Absolutely. They need something different. I don't know what it's going to be. In my eyes, it has to be a tactic shift. It has to be a mindset change. It has to be kind of getting rid of the NHL or bust mentality, or in this case, the PWHL mentality as well. They need to get rid of that, because right now it's not working. And so we'll see as a national program whether they can figure things out, because right now it does not appear as if they will be able to do that. A very disappointing tournament for this Canadian team, getting out in the quarterfinals. Disappointing end. We'll see if they can turn it around for the Men's World Championships. A reminder, we will have our full coverage for that tournament over on YouTube, as well as on our audio versions of the platform. Our preview videos will all be on YouTube, and then our tournament previews as well as both individual day recap videos will also be on our Spotify and audio platform, so stay tuned for that. And then we'll go to the second question from today from Michael Zeta, who says, I guess I was right about Germany, haha. And yeah, you were. And it's part of the interesting thing as well that I'd say is this tournament has been a little bit strange since the very start for really all these teams, and for Germany in particular, where we saw them lose to Denmark. That was a bit of a disappointment. But at the same time, they then followed it up with a really impressive performance against the Czechs, giving themselves an opportunity going into the final day. The German team has still lots to be proud of at this tournament. Obviously, we'll get to you should be proud of this at the end of our tournament. But especially for the Germans, this has been a decent tournament for them, that they just unfortunately lost one game in a bit of a disappointing fashion. Despite outplaying the Danes, they just got goalied. And that was the bottom line. A disappointing end, and ending up being relegated from this tournament, but still a lot to be proud of. I thought the Germans showed well. I thought they played decently well on top of that. Unfortunately for them, just couldn't quite figure it out in the end, and they end up being the relegated team at this year's tournament. Couldn't hold on to a lead with under 2 minutes to go. That is the difference maker there for the Germans, but that will do it today for our coverage of the quarterfinal action for the men's under 18 World Championships. It has been a day. We have done 8 hours and 20 minutes. We've been covering all 5 games over on our YouTube platform, on our live stream. So please come back on Friday, where we'll be doing both the Slovak and Latvia game, as well as Sweden and the Czechs later in the day. Be sure to come back tomorrow or on Friday night as well, as we will break down all of the action from the semifinal and take a look ahead to the gold and bronze medal games. But with that, if you made it this far in the video, thank you for watching. If you'd like to drop a like, if you realize you're subscribing, tell all your friends. You want down below your thoughts on quarterfinal action from the men's under 18 World Championship. Until next time, see ya.